Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Pastor Brian, and I'm out and about at Floyd Lamb State Park, and I'm trying to keep my social distancing within check. And I've got geese around me and stuff. I don't think they got a problem, but I'll keep my distance from people. But I wanted to come out here today and just let you see the scenery that's going on, and to give you a picture of what's going on. And behind me now is the big lake, the big pond that's part of Floyd Lamb. And as I jump into today's devotional and thought, I just want you to know that I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for us, praying for you, and just trying to, like everybody else, navigate this new normal that we've been thrust into. And believe me, sorry about that, believe me, I know it's a new normal. And I know that it's been thrust on us, and that we have just had to adapt on the run. And so I realize that that's true of everyone's life, not just mine, and it's true of the church. And so we're making some of those efforts to adapt and to be flexible and to be accessible all at the same time. With that said, hey, I want to remind you that Sunday we'll be meeting again via Zoom at 10:30 a.m. We will send out an invite, and make sure that you get it. There's a link there that you can click on. Make sure you download the Zoom app to your phone, to your laptop, or to your PC, your desktop, and get plugged in and be a part of it. Don't check it. Don't check out on us, and don't sleep in and think that it's not a big deal, because it is. We can connect, and it was pretty cool. I'll tell you, it was a very cool experience Sunday that we did. Also on Sunday night this week at 6 o'clock, we're going to join together for prayer via Zoom. And we're going to come together and pray, specifically pray. No preaching, stuff like that. It's just praying and praying for one another, praying for what's going on. And it may be that I throw out a few other invitations this week for a Zoom Bible study or chat time, just to see how everybody's doing and to connect. So please be aware of these things, and please take advantage of it. So today, as I want to share with you, I'm just sharing to you and sharing with you what I shared on Sunday. If you were able to join us Sunday, then you may not want to take a look at this, but if you were unable to join us or hear us or whatever else, maybe technical difficulties, take it in and listen up and have fun. I'm going to post this to YouTube, and then I'll send you that link. I'll post it to our website, to our Facebook page. Hopefully our website will be up soon enough that I can post these things to it, and you can go there to access it. So just jump in. So just take note of that and be a part of that. As you know and as you've seen, man, these are raw, and I'm not editing them. I'm not making them perfect. I'm not throwing any graphics up or anything like that, man. We're just being real and being raw and just having fun. So today, if you would, I want you to jump in with me and look at the three Gospels: Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In each of those Gospels is a story that, if you were to put them side by side, you read them, they are extremely close together at that point. Very, very written very much the same way. And I want you to be aware of that. So in Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 to 27, and Mark 4, verses 35 to 31, and in Luke chapter 8, verses 22 to 25, there's a great story that comes up, and there's a great lesson in this, especially in this time that we're dealing with this crisis. And again, folks, it's not lost on me that this coronavirus crisis, this COVID-19, this whole incident is a global thing, and it has affected the world, and it has affected our worlds, and it has affected our city, and it has affected and is affecting our families. So it's not lost on me. And when you hear me speak and I'm wanting to encourage, please don't take that as I don't think this is tough. It is tough. And there's no doubt that there's fear. There's no doubt that there's concern. There's no doubt that there are some wondering of what's going on and why is this happening and how has this happened. But please just know that God's with us. And that's what this story is today, man. It's that great story when Jesus calms the storm on the sea while he's in a boat with his disciples. And all of those little elements come into play today, and I want to highlight and bring those out. I won't take a ton of time on each of these, but I want you to follow, and I want you to understand that these points are meant to challenge us and to encourage us and to help us. So, first things first, Jesus after a day of ministry and doing a whole lot of things, dealing with people, speaking, preaching, teaching, healing, all those type of things, he said to his disciples, let's get in the boat, let's go to the other side of the lake. And they did, and his disciples followed him. I just want to remind you and remind me that if you consider yourself a Jesus follower, a disciple, a person of God, a man or woman of God who believes and loves and believes that he is God and he's the Son of God and that he was crucified, dead, and buried, but was raised to life on the third day to bring us and provide us salvation, then as a disciple, you follow Jesus, I follow Jesus. We are to follow Jesus wherever he goes, no matter when he calls us, no matter where he calls us to. And he called his disciples and he said to them, let's go in the boat. Let's go across to the other side of the lake. The lake or the Sea of Galilee is what he's referring to. I've been on that sea before, that lake. It's pretty amazing. Done a boat trip on it. But I want you to get that even in that small little tidbit in the scriptures, the disciples followed him. They jumped in and they went with him. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what you and I are called to do. And if you're listening to this for the first time, maybe you are a believer. Many of you are believers. I know maybe you're not a believer. Maybe you're just checking it out. Maybe you stumbled across this as a divine appointment by God. And you need to listen that when we are called to follow Jesus, we are called to follow him. And he doesn't have to tell us when we're going exactly, doesn't have to tell us where we're going, doesn't have to tell us what we're experiencing. And I think a lot of times people believe that and expect that of God, that if I follow you, God, you got to tell me everything. You've got to check in with me, and you've got to let me know the daily schedule and daily agenda so that I know what's coming. Folks, that's not part of the deal. That's not part of the gig. Number one, life happens. We don't even know what's happening in life from day to day. So to expect Jesus to say, hey, this is what's going on, or to warn us or that type of thing, I think that's out of line, and I think we're expecting more than we should. Jesus has called us to follow him, and that's what we're supposed to do. And when he calls us to get in the boat in any way, shape, or form, excuse me, that's what we're to do. They headed out onto the lake, and this is the part of the story that really applies today in many ways. Suddenly, without warning, out of the blue, if you want to say, this storm showed up and just swamped them. And ladies and gentlemen and folks, teenagers, young adults, married, non-married, men, women, we have all been swamped by this coronavirus incident. We have been surprised, blindsided by it. And I want you to understand that that's not God's fault. That's part of life. And it happens. And it has created fear, and it has created terror, and it has created all sorts of craziness. Because in the middle of that, this sudden storm shows up, and what happens to the disciples of Jesus? Their boat is rocked. And ladies and gentlemen, your boat, my boat, everyone's boat, our lives have been rocked and shocked and just completely blown out of the water. The apple cart has been upended. We've been thrown out of kilter. Schedules have just been obliterated unless you're a first responder, and maybe that too. Police, fire, hospital, paramedics, they still have to go out and do this. Military, they're still on. But our schedules, our lives have been rocked, and we've had to adapt and say, what do I do with this? How do I do with this? How do I make this happen? And these disciples, again, I go back to this story. They were scared out of their minds. There's no denying, folks, that this virus, this pandemic, this thing has created, does create, is creating fear in all of us and around us. There's no denying that. I don't want to deny that. But they were rocked. And this thing came on suddenly, and then it just messed up their whole lives. And this thing has come on suddenly to us and messed up our whole lives. We don't understand a lot of things. We don't know what to do. I do want to say this, though, that in that boat were at least 4 fishermen. That was their livelihood prior to following Jesus. And they knew how to get into a boat. They knew how to deal with a boat. They knew how to deal with storms, I assume. But they were terrified out of their minds. Even though they were familiar with the water, they were familiar with the boat, they were familiar with this body of water, and they were familiar with dealing with tough times, they were scared. And so, folks, I want to say it's okay for you to be scared. It's okay for me to be scared and have some fear, because we're human. and I believe God understands that too. Another point I want to make is this: Jesus and his disciples were in the boat in the storm when it was getting rocked. They were all together in this. So I want to remind us, and I want to encourage us, and encourage you specifically, that you're not alone. We are in this together. We can get through this together. We can figure out things through this together, and we can be better with this once we get through this together. And in the middle of it, we can be good at it. The scene that really pops up is this. Jesus is asleep in the boat, even though it's getting rocked. And all of a sudden, his disciples turn around and they don't know what to do, although they knew to turn to Jesus. But I don't know why necessarily they turned to Jesus. He was asleep. He was relaxing. He was worn out from the day, and he was asleep in the boat. And the disciples turned to him, Master, what's going on? Save us. We're going to drown. Teacher, we're going to drown. Help us, help us, help us. And Jesus woke up, and he helped them. He calmed the storm. He shut the storm down. He spoke, and the winds died down, and the waves stopped, and it went calm. I think one of the things and the points that I failed to make Sunday when I shared this was that I believe the disciples expected Jesus to be feeling and reacting just like them. And Jesus did not. He was asleep in the boat. He was at peace. And for you and I, we need to understand that Jesus is in the boat with us in this crisis. We are not alone. God is with us. God is with you if, in fact, you're following him. If you're not following him, those of you listening, you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, you thought it wasn't worth it, not worth your time, understand that you don't feel any peace and presence of God because guess what? You're not with him. He's not part of your life. But when he becomes part of your life, there is an overarching and underlying and solid foundation of peace and hope that comes from knowing Jesus and following him. Again, Jesus stood up, he calmed the sea, and he shut it down like that. And then he looked at his disciples and said, where's your faith? You still don't have any faith? What's going on? And I want to remind you that if you were to read the scriptures leading up to this particular passage, in particular in Matthew, you would see that Jesus had healed a leper. He had healed a centurion's servant by just speaking healing. And he healed one of the disciples' mother-in-laws and just touched her hand and healed her, and she was well again. So my point is this: the disciples had seen Jesus heal. They knew he could do this. And still, in the middle of this storm, he was right there with them. They were freaking out. Folks, we're not unlike the disciples. They weren't perfect. We're not perfect. We don't have it all together. And sometimes we lose our minds and we forget that God is God. And in this today, I just want to let you know that God is God. He is near us. He is for us. He is with us. If you're recognizing and celebrating Lent in any way, shape, or form, man, Lent is the time for us to recalibrate, reconnect, resurrect our relationship with God. And then I would say, for many of us, it's time to recognize again who God is. He is in control. He is large and in charge. This does not scare him. This did not surprise him. And he is still doing what God does. And Lent is also a time just to strengthen and revisit and re-up our relationship with Christ. God's in control. He's our answer. He's our peace. God with us, Emmanuel. I want to close with this story. A pastor was flying on an airplane, and as they got up in the air and started to fly, turbulence hit. Man, they got into some extreme turbulence, stuff that bounced them around, scaring people. And as the pastor looked around, he could see the fear and terror on people's faces. And he was just, praying, and he was dealing with his own fears, I'm sure. He looked up and he saw a little girl just ahead of him in a seat, and she was reading a book, humming, kicking her feet in the air, and just doing fine. Every now and then she would look up, maybe when the plane took a big bump and drop and everything. This plane was dropping and lowering and all these type of things. And he watched her the whole time, and that's what she did the whole time. They finally made it to the airport. They landed safely, and all things were good. But this pastor said, I've got to talk to this little girl. She totally impressed me with her demeanor and her calm approach. So he found the little girl and he got permission to speak to her, and he said, "Young lady, how and why were you able to stay so calm in the middle of that turbulence, in the middle of that flight? It was crazy." And she looked at him and she said, "Sir, my father is the pilot. He would never let this plane go down with me in it." And so I leave that with you to say, that's our God. That's who God is. And if you are a friend of God, you're following him, he's got you, and he will care for you, and he will land this thing and help us move forward. God bless you. Have a great day. Get out and enjoy the beautiful weather today. And just know that God is with us. He cares for us, and he loves you. And this stuff is not scaring him. So take heart in that and know that we don't have to live in fear. We can live in hope and peace and confidence that God is with us. God bless.